know that all of us have in some form or fashion. Did you find another one? You did find another one. Can you find out where that one goes? It does? Well, then can you put it back? Cool. So, we've all experienced grief in some form or fashion, and this series has meant to try to help us walk through some of those stages, and a lot of us have had more grief recently than not. And so today we're going to be looking at Isaiah chapter 6, starting in verse 1. So we want to look at what the prophet Isaiah says. You know, Isaiah is he's widely regarded as one of the greatest prophets in the Old Testament, for sure, but maybe also the whole Bible. His 66 chapters in this book are so powerful, and yet, look at how this starts. Look at what his ministry starts with. And so verse 1, it says, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple." Oh, well, let's not tear it anymore. Just a little bit. Can we put it back carefully then? I bet you can be careful. Yeah. So, this is the beginning of Isaiah's ministry. His ministry began with loss. It began with grief. Do we see what's happening here? So if we look at our logo here for what we've done, there is a tornado in this. And that's kind of what we've been talking about. We talk about this spiral, about this tornado of grief that can happen. But look at what's in this tornado. It's got wildflowers. It's not just destruction, there's beauty that is mixed in. It's meant to be conveying the idea that there can be beauty in the nosedive. There can be unexpected blessing in the difficulty. And it's not what is that not what Isaiah the prophet says? He starts with death. He says, "In the year King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord." And Uzziah was a good king. He says this death of a good king, which is hard to face, someone he loved, his friend, someone he trusted, he worked with, now all of a sudden, this king dies. But he says, "I saw the Lord." Do you see the juxtaposition there? There's beauty in the nosedive. Because the truth is, the deeper the pit of our pain, the more space there is for our lives to be filled with God's grace. And if your life feels like there's a hole in it, the hole of someone precious, especially someone who's been ripped out, I hope and pray that today you will allow God to meet you right where you are. Because the thing is, nothing and no one can stop the onslaught of time. The older we get, the closer we know, the more we lose in the process. You know, and that's what's stated in Ecclesiastes chapter 3. It says there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. What is this passage telling us? This passage is telling us that there's always another spiral. There's always another spiral. There's always another difficulty coming. There's also a good side of that, right? There's a time to hug, and that's good. There's a time to gather stones, and that's good. There's a time to heal. But behind that is the time to lose what you gathered. A time to tear what you've sown, a time to say goodbye, not just a time to say hello. There's always another spiral. There's a time to be born and a time to die. You know, we've all faced death. And some of us have faced death at specific holidays. Not just when you face that holiday as the first one of a loss, but sometimes, you know, we face death at a holiday. My dad died, you know, the week of Thanksgiving. And I hated Thanksgiving for the longest time because that's all I could think about was my dad's death. It just wasn't fair that we had to go into Thanksgiving, this time we're meant to be thankful, and here I am like, I'm not thankful right now. I don't have my dad anymore. It took a long time for me to start being okay with Thanksgiving again. Have you ever heard the joke that Jim Gaffigan, he's a comedian, that he tells? He said, someone asked him once, they said, Jim, what's it like having 5 kids? And he goes, okay, imagine you're drowning and someone hands you a baby. He said that's what the 5th kid is like. It's a little bit how it felt to just to barely survive. It's like finishing a marathon and being like, yeah, I did it, and then someone hands you a bicycle because it's actually a triathlon. And you're like, no! What? There's more! He's like, what? Oh, I still gotta swim too? Like, I don't know about this, right? But we're all either in a storm or we are walking with someone who is also in a storm. Maybe you were both in a storm together. Maybe you're about to go into a storm. And yet what we can believe is that even in the spirals of grief, which are some of the most destructive of the spirals we face, that God can be there. I want you to listen to this right here. C.S. Lewis, he used the analogy of a tornado to describe his experience with grief. C.S. Lewis never thought he was going to get married. He was a happy bachelor into later years, but then he was surprised by falling in love with a woman named Joy. His autobiography is called Surprised by Joy, and it's his journey of coming to know Jesus, but it's also a play on words and being surprised by Joy, this wife, this woman that he married. But she tragically got cancer and went home with Jesus not too long after they got married. And he found it very difficult because he never thought he was going to have a wife, but then to find love and then it be ripped away so soon right after. He describes the grief generously for us to look into his experience with these words. He says in grief, nothing stays put. Nothing stays in the bin it's supposed to be in. One keeps on emerging from a phase, but it always recurs. Round and round, everything repeats. Am I going in circles, or dare I hope I'm on a spiral? But if I spiral, am I going up or down it? Indeed, indeed. The stages of grief, anger, bargaining, right? Hopefully, they can lead you to acceptance. Do you get what he's saying here? It's challenging, right? Every bit of it. What do you do when you feel like you're just lost in that spiral? Can you go up or are you going down? It's like saying, you know, I was just there. I just took 4 steps forward and here we are taking 3 more back and another one forward and 5 back. And then it's just like, we're not gaining any ground. You know, I found this in my experience with my dad. I thought I would be okay in the realm of grief, you know, because I I'd faced death before in my family, in my immediate family, and I thought that I would be better prepared when I had to face the reality of my dad's death. But it was totally different. It was totally different, and that's because I had never grieved my dad before. Right? It's a different grief because he's a different person. My relationship with him was different, and so my naivety of thinking I'd be better actually because I'd been through something like that felt like I'd turned my back on the ocean and just got smacked to the ground. Here's the interesting thing. A tornado is not a singular event. Did you know that there can be tornadoes within tornadoes? And EF5, which can go on for miles, can have dozens of smaller tornadoes on the inside of it. And so that's why, I don't know if you've ever seen footage of a neighborhood after a tornado passes through, and there's lots of destruction, and then there'll be a house that's spared. And you're like, what? And that's because within that tornado, there were smaller multi-vortex tornadoes taking place. And so inside of it, that's how some get cleaned right off and others get missed. You can't look at one person who was taken out by a trial and then think, well, I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to be better than that. Because you know what? Even though it might be the same situation with the death of a dad, it's always going to look different. It's not going to be the exact same thing. And that's the bad news. But no matter what you're facing today, there's a spiral on the horizon. But there is good news. And that's what is important for us to remember, is that there's not just bad news, there's always good news. And so having delivered the bad news, here is the good news. Because it's true what Isaiah said. He didn't just say that King Uzziah died. He said, in the year King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord. And that happened not just once for Isaiah, but get this, this happened to him multiple times. He spiraled in God's presence and spiraled up from earth to heaven over and over again. If we look back at just a couple of chapters, we go back to Isaiah 1:1, it says, the vision concerning Judah and Jerusalem that Isaiah, son of Amos, saw during the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. This is how he began his ministry. Uzziah dies, then King Jotham comes up, then King Jotham is taken out, then King Ahaz, and Ahaz gets taken out, and Hezekiah, and then Hezekiah gets taken out. And some people actually postulate, though he doesn't mention him, that he also ministered for a little bit during the reign of King Manasseh. Now that ministry that Isaiah has, he's calling the nation of Israel to repentance on the eve of the Assyrian captivity in 722 BC. And before the Babylonian captivity. These two massive deportation events where the children of Israel get so sinful. And they end up getting taken into captivity as divine training that God wants them to learn. And these are the events that Isaiah uses, and he's there to warn them. And he says, guys, you got to stop. You're running headlong toward a bridge, and the bridge is out. He says, that's not how you're supposed to be going, but nobody listens. Even the leaderships, the kings, one after the other, they end up getting taken out, they end up dying, and they end up failing. And for Isaiah, each time it would have been a sucker punch. Because these are people he cared about. But in that first one, he says, King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord. But then it happened again with King Manasseh, and it happened again with King Ahaz, and it happened again with Jotham and Hezekiah. Each time an earthly throne or earthly seat got empty, he once again spiraled up to God's presence. In the year whoever it was died, I saw the Lord. What I'm trying to say is that no matter what type of spiral of grief we are in, we can still spiral up to God's presence if we keep looking to Him. How does Isaiah, the 66 chapters of his book, contain so many beautiful prophecies? And the famous one of all, of course, is Isaiah 53. It's the most specific and detailed rendering of the crucifixion of Jesus. And it's because he continued to look at Jesus no matter what he faced in his life. Because what Isaiah saw when he looked to heaven stopped him in his tracks. Now Isaiah, you know, he was probably frustrated and still had questions. And he's thinking, God, why do you have to let this happen? Why does this have to be the way it goes? But especially singling out Uzziah. He was a very good king who reigned 52 years. To have a good king that reigns that long and then all of a sudden gets taken out. You know Isaiah was a little worried, stressed, troubled. How are we going to survive without Uzziah? He was spinning round and round and round. But then he says, I saw the Lord seated on a throne. And he was stopped right there in his tracks. And look what he says again in verse 5. Woe to me, I cried, I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. It stopped him in his tracks. He knew how unworthy he was to be standing there. But you know what? This is kind of like a reminder of like what it might be to go to the Grand Canyon. How many of you have ever gone to the Grand Canyon? Some of you live right there, right? I hope you've gone to the Grand Canyon, right? You know, when you start going to the Grand Canyon, the first time you're ever there, it's one of those things, you know it's a big hole, right? You know it's a big hole, and you're like, how far away is this big hole that we got to get to? And you know, you're like walking up the path trying to get there, and then you get there, and you're just like, whoa. Because it's not anything like you imagined. You've seen pictures, but pictures don't do it justice when you're standing there, and it's just as vast as it is. You get lost in looking at it. Whoa. It stops you in your tracks. And this is what I picture Isaiah standing there, but even in even more grandeur, splendor, but just standing there, stopping in his tracks. Whoa. That's what Isaiah was like when he's like, God, why would you let Uzziah die? But then he sees God and he's like, oh yeah, I get it now. And the deeper Isaiah fell at the feet of the Lord, the more he lifted his eyes to Jesus. God showed him. He had fresh grief and fresh glory. Even though he had already spiraled and saw something in God, when the next king died, when the next difficulty happened, when the Assyrian captivity happened anyway, when even after the Assyrian captivity, the tribes of Judah, they continued to persist in a way that was going to guarantee that they would go to the same way to the Babylonian captivity. When he spiraled down and looked into God, and he saw even more. Even more. Because no eye has seen, no ear has heard what God has prepared for those who love him. Isaiah was shook. He fell on his face. He continued to spiral up into God's presence. Now what I want to do real quick is give us a few things to help us in our moments of spiraling. Things to help us keep our eyes on God. To keep going round and round in the right direction. Alright, so number one is mourn specifically and thoroughly. This is training for the trial you're not yet in, if you're not grieving today. But if you are, use this. Mourn specifically and thoroughly. So we're going to start with thoroughly right here. It says if you don't go through it, your grief, It's going to be like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. And so that means that when we talk about going thoroughly through it, it means that we need to feel it. The only way that we're going to go through it is to feel it. And we hate that. Now the problem with that is there's lots of things that we can do to numb ourselves so we don't feel bad. Because we don't want to feel bad. And we can do lots of things to alter our state of mind and to keep ourselves from actually just feeling it. And the only problem with numbing ourselves is that not feeling is not the same as healing. You can numb and not feel. You'll come back out of the numbness and you'll need to numb it again because you've not dealt with it yet. It's a lot of force. It's a lot of something. It doesn't come out and get processed in healthy ways if we're not careful. A lot of people turn to drugs or alcohol, other things to numb it. Don't be afraid of counseling. Because we have to feel in order to heal. We know it's uncomfortable and it's a lot easier if we just eat something. It's a lot easier to just drink something. It's a lot easier just to smoke something or just watch something or anything that you could do to dull the pain. Yeah, that's easy. But that doesn't help you through it. Okay, second part of this is mourn specifically. What do I mean? I mean, don't accidentally mourn things that you shouldn't. That's the trick of mourning, is actually differentiating. Okay? So there's something that we're told and trained on, and that's you have to differentiate your grief. And that sounds weird, and you're going, why in the world would you have to differentiate your grief? Have you ever felt an overwhelm when you had so much laundry and it's just mountains of laundry and you're like, I don't even know where to start because there's mountains of laundry? Or some other thing that needs to be taken care of and cleaned up and you're just like, I don't even know where to start. It's a jumbled mess. Like, I get like that terribly. Like, if there's something that is just like lots out of place, lots overwhelmed, it's like immediate overwhelm, and I'm like, I can't do it. I can't touch it because I can't look at it. But when we have piles of laundry, when we have things that are just piled up everywhere, things that we have to straighten up, the first thing you have to do is differentiate it, right? So with laundry, you have multiple bins or multiple locations, and what do you put in one pile? Whites. What do you put in another pile? Darks. What do you put in another pile? Colors, right? Reds, whatever. However you sort your laundry, however many piles you need. When I'm looking at the dining room table and everything has been thrown there, it's become a catch-all and I can't look at it, if somebody can help sort and just put all the papers together, put all the books together, put all the things together, then I can go through it because it's a stack at a time. Same way we do our laundry. When it's piled up, I can do this pile right here, right now. Done. We have to do the same thing with our grief. It sounds weird, but when you're grieving and we just feel this overwhelm, this whole grief, we question, what am I actually grieving? And so how do we differentiate it? So you grab a pen, you grab a piece of paper, and you write down the answers to 3 questions. And the first question is this, is what have I not lost? What's in this pile of grief that I'm tempted to grieve, but I haven't actually lost? With my dad, I haven't lost any of my memories with him. I haven't lost the memories of laying outside at night and counting the stars and timing satellites. I haven't lost those car rides when he was taking me to AAU basketball games, and I haven't lost those memories. I haven't lost the lessons that he taught me. I haven't lost the time that I got to spend with him and the way he shaped me. He continues to shape me as a parent by feeling how profoundly I'm impacted by his absence. The negative space of him being taken away, it's shown me what I don't want to miss out on. The second question here, what can't I lose? Because I'm a Christian and I'm headed to heaven, and I'm mourning now the absence of someone who didn't go into ground, but they went to Jesus in heaven, which is where I'm going. And so that means that there's going to come a day when I'm reunited with them. I can't lose that. I don't have to feel bad for someone who's died because they've just gone to sleep in Jesus. They're not missing out on anything. I'm not going to mourn my future with them because I can't lose that. You see that? So that's another mountain of grief. That's what goes in another bed. The third question, what have I actually lost? What have I actually lost? Well, I've lost the ability to pick up the phone and call him. I've lost the ability to, text him. Sorry guys, I stuff in my pocket. We're gonna try. There we go. Readjusting. I haven't lost, or what I have lost though, is the ability to pick up the phone, to call him, to text him, to have him come to, gymnastics with Kazuo, to watch Joey participate in gaming and to come to her graduation. Those are things, I've lost those things. Those are the things that we grieve. Those are the things. But I'm not going to dwell on those things because no one is promised tomorrow. I may not get to see those things either. But when we break it down, it lets us actually grieve what we're supposed to grieve and not all the what ifs, not all the things that don't actually matter, not the things that we haven't actually lost, not the things that we can't lose, but the things that we really need to grieve. So those are the three questions that we ask when we're talking about mourning specifically and thoroughly. The second thing that we do, though, is deal with ourselves gently. How to spiral up, not down. We have to deal with ourselves gently. When you're in one of those C.S. Lewis tumbles, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm back in this phase again? I already got done with anger. I should not be back to anger. What do? You get angry with yourself because you're angry. It's like when suddenly grief hits you again and you start crying, and then you get mad because you're crying again. Deal with yourself gently. Everyone progresses at a different pace. It may take you longer, and it's okay to remember that and not be like, I shouldn't still be here. It's like tying your shoes for the first time. You try to tie them and maybe you didn't get it the first time. And you're hard on yourself because you didn't get it the first time. But you know what? You've never done it before. So when we lose someone, we've never grieved them before. We may have been through grief, but we've never grieved them before. So be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. The third thing is Be vulnerable with community. Let people in. I hope that you have people that you can pick up your phone and call in the middle of the night, anytime. I hope you have people that you can just unload on. And they will just breathe and walk with you. The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. If I don't let my friend help me heal, I'm becoming a greater burden to them by remaining an unhealed version of myself in the relationship where they could help me to become a freer version. I want to be less of a burden, not more. So be vulnerable with community. 4, talk to God honestly. Don't hurt as bad as you are and then give God flowery prayers that you think He wants to hear. He wants to know how you're actually doing. It's okay to get angry and mad at Him because you know what? He can take it. He can take it. 1 Peter 5:7 says, give all your worries and cares to God, for He cares about you. So be honest with Him. Number 5, share what you learn selflessly. Words. Commit. Even though you're hurting so bad right now that you can hardly even think of a day coming when you're going to be able to help someone, I encourage you right now to commit. To tell yourself, when this happens, I will share what I've learned. I will give God the glory and the grief, and that I'm going to share that with anyone else that walks through something like that. Commit right now, because if God's going to unlock new glory, there's going to be other people that need it. You know, there's a scene at the end of Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade where he's having to cross this great chasm and he's afraid. And he makes it across, but when he gets to the other side, he takes the stones and he throws them back, and so everybody else can see where to go. Why aren't we doing the same? I've been through that. Let me throw you a stone so you can see. There's so much more. Number 6. Interpret the struggle accurately. When we face another spiral, even if we barely got our breath from the last one and we're trying to swim, even though we just got off the bike, we've got to interpret it accurately, because here's how it's going to go. This new spiral is an unpleasant means to a blessed end. This leads to blessings. Say it over the spiral that you're in. This leads to blessing. How do we know we have the authority to say that? Because of Jesus. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who are persecuted. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the spiraling. We're blessed because that pain is going to lead us to look to Him. And when we look to Him in our pain, He fills us with His presence, and then we walk away blessed. We walk away blessed. You know what storm chasers do? They don't just chase a storm, right? They don't just try to predict where it's heading and giving updates and things like that. But after the fact, they go out and they estimate what the storm was, and EF0, EF5, right? They base that on how much damage is done. So in our life, when we're tempted to say, this is terrible, this is bad, we can't write the story yet, because we don't know how it's going to go. In the end, it's going to be what God says about it, and He gets the last word. He speaks over our situation, over our spiraling today, and there's blessing. There's glory in it. In Italy, there's a statue of David, right? You may have seen this whole statue or portions of it, but it's interesting the way that it's positioned. You know, he's not just standing straight on. He's got most of his leg like on the left, and he's kind of twisted. There's an arm here, sling down here, and it just looks like he's in this movement, this spiral that he is moving through, right? And what's interesting is that the tour guides, they'll tell you that this statue is built out of a stone that was rejected. The guide will tell you that this means it's like the contrapto is a counterpoise. It means that all his weight's on his right leg, and he looks like he's about to step on his left. His hands are this way, his other hands are that way. He's holding the sling, but the stone's down here. But what he's facing this way in his body, but his eyes, they're looking over at a different place. So everything about the statue is twisting. It has movement. She said it's almost like a living spiral. And then the guy will tell you, watch how people walk up to it. When people walk up to it, they immediately start going around and around it. They have to see it from every side. There's actually 40 different angles that you can view this statue from. And Michelangelo, he talked about how he knew it was going to be sitting out somewhere and not like in a corner up against the wall, because it was going to have people circling it, trying to see every side. And when you see it, when you're standing in front of it, it makes you want to see the other side. You know what? That's what it's like to know God. Isaiah chapter 6, we continue on there. It says that the seraphim, they're angels that are flying around, and God they're constantly singing and crying out. And it happens in Revelation 4 and 5 as well. They're 700 years apart from the two books being written. And yet the same thing is happening. Seraphim, they're crying out, they're flying around, they're saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. No, but it's grief. But it's glory. How do you spiral up? You keep looking at God from another angle. It was Uzziah's death. It was Jotham's death. It was Amos's death, Manasseh's death, Hezekiah's death. It's how am I going to deal with this difficulty now? It hasn't ended. It's not over. We just keep looking, because there's no end to the goodness of God. There's no end to the feet of Jesus. There's one last thing here. Number 7, store your eggs carefully. The value of your eggs. The eggs of your worth. The eggs of your identity. You've got to pick the basket very intentionally, because the world would have you store them into the basket of this life, where your worth comes from what you do, and what you get to wear, and where you get to live, and who you get to know, and how you get to play, and where you get to spend your life. Your value comes from the friends, the opportunities you've taken. But that's not what Scripture tells us, right? There's a time to be born, a time to die, time to play in the NFL, time to get cut, time to be successful, time to not be successful, time to be the youngest, and time to be a little bit long on the tooth. Time to get everybody, and a time for people to go. If we're storing our eggs of our identity anywhere other than glory, then they're going to be taken from us. But if who you are and what makes you comes from Jesus, death doesn't take you from your treasure. It takes you to it. Death doesn't take you from your treasure, it takes you to it. So let's store our eggs in the basket of, wow, being stopped dead in our tracks. Being able to stand back and look at His grandeur. Our closing song today is, He makes everything beautiful, and that's so important for us to remember in those spirals. To keep looking for the beauty. To find His glory. So this morning, I want to encourage you, if you are caught in a spiral, you just feel like you're going round and round, not sure if you're going up or down. If you've got a spiral of grief, I want to encourage you to come pray. Come pray. The altar is always open. You're welcome. So let's pray this morning. Father God, we know that there are spirals all around us. God, we just pray that you will help us to keep climbing with you. God, help us to be an example for someone else who may need to see you. Help us to guide them in the right direction, to be willing to share what we've learned selflessly. Remind us to be gentle with ourselves. Remind us to mourn specifically and thoroughly, to be vulnerable with our community, to talk honestly with you. Help us to interpret all of it accurately and to put our eggs in the correct baskets. God, like our laundry, help us sort it and put it where it needs to go. Because God, we know that you make everything beautiful. We know that it'll be for your glory, no matter what that looks like. So God, help us to see it and cherish it. We love you. In Jesus' name.